Every morning, long before the sun peeked over the rooftops, the neighborhood stirred awake to the same quiet, comforting sight. There she was, Leela, a little girl no older than 8, bundled up in a bright red jacket that seemed to glow against the soft gray dawn. She stepped carefully down the cracked sidewalk, her breath forming small clouds in the chilly air. In one hand, she held the leash of a massive golden retriever with eyes full of gentle wisdom. In the other, a smaller but equally sturdy border collie trotted faithfully by her side. The two dogs moved in perfect harmony, obedient and calm, as if they shared some secret understanding with the little girl. Leela was a mystery wrapped in routine. For weeks, the neighbors had watched her silently, their curiosity growing with each passing morning. She never spoke to anyone, never stopped to play or chat, only walked steadily with purpose, her eyes fixed ahead, as if the world beyond the trees called her. And always, without fail, she appeared at the same time. 6:30 am, rain or shine. Mrs. Patel, who lived 2 houses down, was the first to notice. One chilly autumn morning, she stood at her kitchen window sipping tea and saw Leela pass by. There was something about the little girl's calm determination that tugged at her heart. How does she manage those big dogs all alone? Mrs. Patel wondered aloud to herself. And where do her parents go so early? It wasn't just Mrs. Patel who noticed. Across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Garcia often watched from their porch as Leela passed, wrapped in silence but moving with quiet confidence. She looks so small, but those dogs follow her like she's the leader of a pack, Mr. Garcia said one morning. His wife nodded. It's almost like she's been doing this forever. Children at the bus stop whispered about Lila's walks. Some said the dogs were magical, others claimed she must have some special bond with them. No one dared to ask too much, though. Lila didn't talk much, and the few times she did, her words were soft and careful, like she was guarding a secret. The streets themselves seemed to hold their breath each morning. As Leela walked past the neatly trimmed lawns and sleepy mailboxes, the world felt quieter, as if it respected her small journey. She never hurried, but she never lingered. With every step, she carried a sense of purpose that made the early hours feel meaningful. But beneath the peaceful routine, there was something more. A gentle tension that some neighbors felt but couldn't explain. The dogs were large and strong, but never unruly. They obeyed Leela perfectly, and yet the girl herself seemed so delicate. How could such a young child control such powerful animals? And why was she always alone? One rainy morning, a neighbor's cat darted across the street, and the dogs barely twitched. Leela pulled on their leashes gently, and they stopped as if on command, sitting patiently by her side. It was a moment that made Mr. and Mrs. Garcia exchange glances. There's something special about her, Mrs. Garcia whispered. Something we don't understand yet. As the weeks passed, more neighbors began to notice Leela's unwavering routine. Some found themselves waking earlier just to catch a glimpse of her and the dogs. Others tried to catch her eye, hoping for a smile or a wave. But Leela always walked quietly, her face calm and unreadable, leaving behind only the soft sound of paws on pavement and the whisper of a secret the neighborhood had yet to uncover. As the days turned into weeks, the quiet morning walks of the little girl and her 2 dogs became the talk of the neighborhood. At first, the conversations were polite and brief, just passing comments over fences or quick exchanges by the mailbox. But soon, whispers grew louder, and curiosity began to ripple through the town like a gentle wave. Have you noticed that she's always alone? Mrs. Patel asked her book club one afternoon, her eyes bright with intrigue. Not a single adult with her. Where are her parents? Or anyone else? It's strange, replied Mr. Garcia, shaking his head. And those dogs, so big and well-trained. It's almost like she's been doing this for years, but how? She's just a little girl. The neighbors found themselves watching more closely. They wondered about Lila's life behind the closed doors of her small house at the end of the block. Was she a lonely child? Did she have family? No one seemed to know. No one had ever seen her parents or any adults coming or going during the early hours. Over time, the neighborhood began to divide into different camps. Some believed Lila's routine was a sign of independence, a brave little girl learning to take care of herself. Others worried she might be in trouble, that no one was looking out for her properly. "It's not safe for a child so young to be alone with those dogs," one concerned neighbor said at a community meeting. "What if something happens? Shouldn't someone check on her?" But the more the neighbors talked, the more mysterious Lila seemed. She never complained, never appeared tired or scared. Instead, she walked with quiet confidence, always arriving home before the sun was fully up. The dogs never barked, never pulled on their leashes, as if they understood the importance of the routine. Children in the neighborhood were fascinated. They made up stories about Lila and her dogs. Some imagined she was a secret guardian of the town, protecting it from unseen dangers. Others believed the dogs had magical powers, and Lila was their fearless leader. The mystery gave the neighborhood a spark of wonder in their otherwise ordinary days. One chilly morning, a group of neighbors gathered near the corner of the street, hoping to catch a closer look. They whispered softly as Lila passed, her footsteps light and steady. Nobody wanted to startle her, but the questions hung in the air. "Where does she go every day?" a young mother asked. "And why does she come back so calm, like she's been somewhere special?" "Maybe she's visiting someone sick," an elderly woman suggested. "Or maybe the dogs need their exercise early before the city wakes up." No one had answers, but the guesses only deepened the mystery. The little girl was part of the neighborhood now, yet still somehow separate, like a story waiting to be told. As the days passed, Lila's silent walks became a quiet ritual that brought the neighborhood together. Strangers exchanged glances and speculated. Children waited eagerly for her appearance, and even the busiest adults found themselves slowing down just to watch. But beneath the curiosity, some neighbors felt a growing unease. The fact that no one knew anything about Lila's home life left a shadow over the town's fascination. It was a feeling like waiting for a secret to slip through the cracks, something important, something that might change everything once it was finally revealed. And so, the mystery of the little girl and her dogs deepened. With every morning walk, the town held its breath, wondering when the quiet routine would break, and what astonishing secret lay waiting just beneath the surface. As Lila's quiet morning routine continued, the whispers around the neighborhood grew louder, filled with curiosity and concern. Some neighbors debated whether to intervene, while others simply watched from their windows, fascinated but hesitant to get involved. But one crisp fall morning, a few decided to take a step further. They chose to follow her. Mrs. Patel, Mr. Garcia, and a younger neighbor named Emily agreed to meet just before dawn. They wanted to understand where Lila went during her walks and why she was always so alone. Standing quietly near the edge of the street, they waited for the red jacket to appear. At exactly 6:30 a.m., Lila stepped outside, the two dogs instantly alert beside her. Without a word, she began walking, her pace steady and calm. The neighbors followed at a safe distance, careful not to disturb her peaceful routine. The morning air was crisp, filled with the scent of fallen leaves and dew. The group watched as Lila led her dogs through familiar streets, the same ones everyone passed daily. But today their eyes were sharper, searching for clues. Lila passed houses where neighbors had lived for years, but she didn't stop or look toward any of them. Instead, she walked with purpose toward the edge of town, where the houses thinned and the trees grew taller. As they approached the old woods, a place most children avoided, the neighbors felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the unknown. Lila slowed her pace and finally stopped near a narrow path that disappeared into the shadows of the trees. She looked around carefully, then knelt down to pet her dogs gently. Mrs. Patel swallowed nervously. "Does she come here every day?" she whispered. "It looks like it," Emily replied, her voice soft. "But why? What's waiting for her in those woods?" The neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. The dogs sat quietly, their eyes alert but calm, as if they sensed something important nearby. Lila's face was calm, but her eyes showed a flicker of emotion, a hint of something deeper than the routine anyone had seen before. After a few moments, Lila stood and started back the way she came. The neighbors followed again, their minds swirling with questions but respecting her privacy. As she crossed back into the neighborhood streets, the early sunlight began to peek through the trees, casting long shadows on the pavement. The trio walked silently back to their homes, unsure what to make of what they'd seen. The woods held a secret, and Lila was guarding it tightly. Her small figure, walking confidently through the quiet streets every morning, now seemed even more mysterious. Over the next few days, the neighbors talked quietly about their experience. Some thought Lila's secret was something sad. Maybe she was meeting someone she missed, or visiting a hidden place of comfort. Others hoped it was something hopeful, a sign of strength and courage. Mr. Garcia suggested they wait and see if Lila would ever let anyone in. "She's brave," he said, "but she's careful. Maybe one day she'll trust us enough to share her story." Mrs. Patel nodded. "Until then, we watch and protect her from a distance. She's part of our community, even if we don't know everything." And so, the quiet watches continued. Neighbors kept an eye on Lila's morning walks, each step bringing them closer to understanding. The mystery of the little girl, her two dogs, and the edge of the woods grew richer, an unfolding story that had captured the heart of the entire neighborhood. The question remained, what secret was hidden beyond the trees, and when would it finally be revealed? The quiet morning walks had become a ritual for Lila, but for the neighbors, the growing mystery was becoming harder to ignore. Questions hung in the air like fog, thick and persistent. Some wanted answers. Others hoped they wouldn't discover something that would change everything. One particularly crisp morning, Mr. Jenkins, a retired schoolteacher known for his gentle nature and curious mind, decided he could no longer stay silent. He had watched Lila for weeks from his front porch, admiring her courage and the careful way she handled her dogs. But something about her solitude tugged at his heart. When Lila walked by, the golden retriever and border collie faithfully at her sides, Mr. Jenkins stepped onto the sidewalk. Clearing his throat softly, he called out, "Good morning, Lila." The girl looked up, startled but not afraid. Her deep brown eyes met his, calm and steady. Mr. Jenkins smiled kindly and said, "Those dogs are wonderful. You must take very good care of them." Lila nodded quietly. "Thank you." Gathering his courage, Mr. Jenkins asked gently, "Do your parents know you're out so early every day?" Lila paused, her gaze drifting briefly toward the rising sun. Then, without hesitation, she answered softly, "They trust me." Mr. Jenkins blinked, surprised by the maturity in her voice. "They trust you. Are they nearby?" She shook her head, her expression unreadable. "No, not nearby." Mr. Jenkins felt a mix of concern and respect. "That's very brave of you, Lila. But if you ever need help or someone to talk to, I'm right here. You're not alone." Lila's lips curved into a small, shy smile. "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins." Without another word, she turned and continued her walk, the dogs obediently following. Mr. Jenkins watched her disappear down the street, his mind racing with thoughts and questions. Who were her parents? Why did they trust her so much? And how had this little girl become so self-reliant? That conversation sparked a new wave of discussion among the neighbors. Mr. Jenkins shared what he'd learned, and others began to see Lila in a different light, not just as a mystery, but as a child with a story waiting to be understood. Mrs. Patel reflected on the courage it took for Lila to say those few words. "She's stronger than we thought," she told a friend, "and maybe more alone too." The quiet routine continued, but now the neighborhood watched with softer eyes, filled with empathy rather than just curiosity. The little girl who walked her dogs each morning was no longer just a mystery. She was someone they wanted to protect and support. One afternoon at the local bakery, a few neighbors quietly planned how to offer help without overwhelming Leela. They debated the best way to reach out, to show kindness without breaking the trust she had built so carefully. Meanwhile, Lila's life went on quietly. She kept her secret close, her walk steady and sure. But beneath the surface, the neighborhood's concern was growing into a quiet determination, an unspoken promise to watch over her until she was ready to share her truth. And so, the story deepened. The little girl who had walked her dogs every morning was no longer just a passing curiosity. She was becoming the heart of the community's hopes and care, a reminder that sometimes the quietest lives hold the most powerful stories. The quiet town had grown fond of the little girl in the red jacket. Yet despite the growing warmth, the biggest mystery remained unsolved. Who was Leela, and what was her story? After Mr. Jenkins's gentle conversation with Leela, many neighbors felt a deeper urge to find out more, curiosity mixed with concern. They wanted to help but didn't want to intrude. So, quietly and carefully, they began asking around. Mrs. Patel spoke to the mail carrier, hoping to learn more. "Have you seen Leela's family?" she asked one afternoon. The mail carrier shrugged. "Never seen any parents or adults with her. Just a young man a few years older than me sometimes comes and goes. He looks tired but kind." This small detail was new, and Mrs. Patel shared it with others. The neighbors exchanged theories. Maybe Lila's older brother was the one caring for her, but no one knew exactly which house she lived in. The little girl was often seen walking from the same end of the street, but the house at that corner always appeared empty early in the morning. Lights stayed off until later in the day. Curious neighbors took turns observing the house, hoping to spot someone or something that would shed light on Lila's life. Mr. Garcia noticed that the lawn was neatly kept, and the two dogs' collars looked clean and cared for. "Whoever's looking after her is doing their best," he remarked. The mystery deepened one afternoon when a neighbor spotted Leela carrying a small backpack as she left the house. Inside, there appeared to be a few books and something wrapped in cloth. The discovery made neighbors wonder, was she going to school? Who helped her with homework? At the next neighborhood gathering, the conversation turned serious. "We should reach out," said Emily, the young mother who had followed Leela before. "But we need to be careful. She's very private." "Maybe we can offer small help," suggested Mrs. Patel. "A meal, a ride to school, or even just a friendly visit." But others worried about crossing a line. "What if we scare her?" Mr. Garcia cautioned. "She's managing so well on her own." One neighbor finally suggested involving the authorities gently, not as a complaint, but as a check to make sure Leela and her dogs were safe. Soon after, Animal Services was called to check on the dogs. When an officer arrived at the house at the end of Leela's walk, they found a modest home with signs of life. A few toys on the porch, carefully hung clothes inside the windows, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of freshly baked bread. Inside, they met Leela's older brother, Ethan, who was surprised but grateful for the visit. He explained quietly that their parents had passed away about a year ago, and since then, he had taken on the responsibility of caring for Leela and the dogs. He worked nights at a nearby factory and did his best to give his sister a safe home. The morning walks were Leela's favorite time, a chance to feel close to the dogs that once belonged to their parents and to hold on to memories that still meant everything to her. The neighbors learned that the quiet little girl's world was full of love and struggle, courage and resilience. The mystery they had chased was not one of neglect or fear, but one of two siblings doing their best to get by together. This revelation changed everything. The neighbors felt a new connection, a shared responsibility to support Leela and Ethan in ways big and small. And though many questions still lingered, one thing was clear. The little girl walking her dogs every morning was no longer alone in the world. The moment the neighbors learned Leela's secret, the quiet bravery behind her morning walks, their perspective shifted completely. What had once been a mystery now felt like a powerful story of resilience and love. It wasn't just about a little girl walking dogs. It was about a family holding on through the hardest of times. Leela's older brother, Ethan, became a quiet hero in the eyes of the community. His tired but kind face told stories of late nights and early mornings spent working multiple jobs. He carried the weight of responsibility without complaint, determined to give Leela a childhood as normal as possible. The dogs, Golden and Loyal, were more than pets. They were living memories of their parents, a link to the family they'd lost. Each morning's walk was Leela's way of honoring that past, keeping a connection alive that nothing could break. Neighbors began to reach out in small ways. Mrs. Patel brought warm meals, placing them gently on Ethan's doorstep when she knew he was at work. Mr. Garcia offered to mow their lawn and help with odd jobs around the house. Even the children shared their toys and invited Leela to play, hoping to bring moments of joy to her quiet life. But Leela's strength was remarkable. She faced each day with a calm resolve that surprised everyone. Despite the weight of loss, she still smiled, still laughed softly when the dogs chased leaves, or when her brother came home after a long shift. Ethan explained that the morning walks help Leela find peace. Those walks give her a sense of normalcy, he told Mr. Jenkins one afternoon. She feels like she's part of the world again, not just stuck in the past. Mr. Jenkins nodded, understanding more than words could say. The routine was more than a habit, it was a lifeline. At school, Leela was quiet but kind, a girl who listened more than she spoke. Her teachers noticed her gentle nature and her fierce determination to keep up despite the challenges at home. They quietly offered extra help, knowing she needed more than just lessons in math and reading. The community's care became a soft safety net. Neighbors watched for Ethan's tired eyes, for Leela's small moments of sadness. They didn't pry, but they were ready to step in whenever needed. Through it all, the dogs remained by Leela's side, patient and protective. Their presence comforted her, grounding her in a world that often felt uncertain. One morning, as the sun rose golden over the street, Leela walked her dogs with a lighter step. She smiled more freely, her eyes sparkling with the quiet joy of knowing she was not alone. The neighborhood had become her extended family, a circle of support that lifted her up when the weight of loss pressed down. In those early hours, as the world slowly woke, the little girl and her dogs walked together, symbols of strength, hope, and the quiet power of love that can carry us through even the darkest times. And in that simple, beautiful routine, a whole community found inspiration, a reminder that sometimes the strongest stories are the ones told without words. As weeks turned into months, the neighborhood began to transform. The quiet curiosity about Leela and her dogs grew into a genuine bond between the little girl's family and the people around them. What started as whispered questions and distant watching had blossomed into a community united by kindness. Neighbors no longer just observed Leela's walks, they joined in small ways to support her and Ethan. On weekends, Mr. Garcia and a few others helped fix the fence around the yard, making sure the dogs could run safely. Mrs. Patel and Emily organized a small collection of school supplies and toys for Leela, dropping them off with a note that said simply, "We're here for you." At school, Leela's teachers noticed a subtle change. She seemed more at ease, her shy smiles growing more frequent. Other children who had once been too hesitant to approach her began inviting her to play during recess. The gentle companionship brightened Leela's days, weaving threads of friendship into her quiet life. Ethan, too, felt the difference. Knowing that neighbors cared, that there were people willing to help, lifted some of the heavy burden he carried alone. One afternoon, after a long shift, he found a warm meal waiting on his doorstep, a gift from Mrs. Patel. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. The dogs, Golden and Border Collie, became familiar figures to the neighborhood's children. They learned to respect the animal's calm nature, watching as Leela cared for them with tenderness and patience. The dogs, in return, seemed to sense the kindness surrounding their family, growing more relaxed and happy. One evening, the neighborhood held an informal gathering in the park nearby. It was simple, a few blankets, a potluck dinner, and quiet conversations under the stars. Leela and Ethan were invited, hesitant at first, but warmed by the genuine smiles and welcoming words. There, surrounded by new friends, Leela felt the weight of loneliness lift just a little. She sat quietly with her dogs by her side, watching the laughter and light around her, a small smile breaking through her usual reserve. Ethan spoke softly to Mr. Jenkins, grateful for the support that had quietly grown around them. "We're not alone anymore," he said. "It's a relief, knowing there's a village behind us." Mr. Jenkins nodded, his eyes shining with pride. Sometimes, it takes a community to help heal a family. As the night deepened, the stars twinkled like tiny promises above, and Layla's story, once hidden in quiet morning walks, became a shared chapter of hope and connection. The little girl and her dogs were no longer mysteries to be solved, but cherished parts of a neighborhood that had opened its heart. The routine that had once seemed ordinary was now a symbol of resilience and the power of kindness. And the future, once uncertain and shadowed, now held the bright possibility of healing, friendship, and new beginnings. The days that followed the neighborhood gathering were filled with a quiet joy that had been missing for a long time. Lila's world, once small and shadowed by loss, began to expand in ways she had never imagined. The kindness she and Ethan received became a steady light, guiding them through uncertain times. Neighbors continued to show their support in simple but meaningful ways. Mrs. Patel made sure to leave warm meals during Ethan's long shifts. Emily organized weekend playdates for Leela with the neighborhood children, helping her build friendships that had seemed so distant before. Mr. Garcia offered to fix up the old house, helping Ethan with repairs that had been too overwhelming to manage alone. But perhaps the most important change was in Leela herself. Each morning, as she put on her red jacket and clipped the leash to her dog's collars, she did so with a new sense of hope. The dogs, ever faithful, walked beside her with steady steps, their bond growing stronger with every passing day. School became a place of warmth instead of worry. Teachers noticed how Layla's eyes shone brighter, how she participated a little more, how laughter occasionally bubbled up where silence had once been. Classmates invited her to join games, and for the first time, Leela felt like she truly belonged. One spring morning, Layla's father, her brother Ethan, stood on the porch watching her head out for her usual walk. He felt a swell of pride mixed with relief. The burden he'd carried alone for so long was beginning to lighten, shared now with a caring community that had opened its arms to them both. The morning walks became a joyful ritual, a symbol of strength and healing. The neighborhood no longer saw just a little girl walking her dogs, but a brave spirit who had faced loss and found the courage to keep moving forward. Leela's story, once a secret kept behind closed doors, had become a testament to the power of connection. It reminded everyone that even in the darkest moments, kindness could light the way, and no one had to face life's challenges alone. One afternoon, as the sun set in warm shades of pink and gold, Leela and Ethan invited some neighbors over for a small celebration. A simple gathering with food, laughter, and stories shared beneath the open sky. The dogs played happily among the children, their tails wagging as if they understood the significance of the moment. Mr. Jenkins raised his glass in a quiet toast. "To Leela and Ethan," he said, smiling warmly. "May your path forward be filled with hope, friendship, and the love of this community." The neighbors cheered softly, a circle of support that promised to stay strong. Lila looked around at the faces filled with kindness, feeling the warmth that wrapped around her heart like a gentle hug. As the stars began to twinkle above, the little girl in the red jacket walked her dogs with a peaceful smile, knowing that she was finally home, not just in a house, but in a neighborhood that cared, a community that loved. And every morning, as she stepped out into the fresh air with her dogs by her side, Leela carried with her the astonishing secret that had once set her apart: the quiet strength to keep moving forward, surrounded by the unwavering support of those who believed in her.